Welcome to episode 4 of The Agency Way, everybody. This is a Room 214 weekly blab series to help marketers learn from subject matter experts within a marketing agency. In addition to that, we also have guest thought leaders in business and marketing worldwide. I'm Jason Cormier, your host, as well as the co-founder of Room 214, a digital and social media marketing agency. Our guest on the show today is Libby Turner, who has served as a senior account director at Room 214 for several years. Libby's been involved in everything from SEO, pay-per-click, email marketing, social media strategy, and campaign development. She's worked for companies like Mr. Coffee, Crock-Pot, BioElements. I know she's done work for Qdoba, Smashburger, Wholesome Sweeteners. The list goes on. She's a rock star. And Libby, before I welcome you to the show, I'm just going to say you are making blab history here, at least on the agency way, because for those of you people that are looking at Libby right now, they will recognize that maybe there's some irregularity in her lips. Libby, what's going on?
Oh my goodness. Well, I kind of forgot that I had a dentist appointment this morning to get a filling, and they numbed the heck out of my face. So I'm having a little difficulty with the left side of my face. So it'll be hopefully not too distracting, but it's kind of funny because I physically cannot line my lips up properly.
Well, you are an awesome sport. And so, here you are on camera with your crooked lips. And I'm just going to see, this is me giving you props right now. I
like it.
So those of you that are watching Libby, lower right-hand corner there, give props because, if my face were crooked, I would want props.
Well,
All right, cool. Well, let's jump right into this. Libby, an eMarketer study last year reported that just over 32% of US-based companies were using Instagram for marketing purposes. And that number is supposed to increase to over 40% or 48%, by the end of this year. The fact is all of us on Instagram, which has been my favorite social network for quite a while, we're seeing more ads than we ever have, even over the last 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
To get us started, maybe you can share with our audience why you think Instagram is something they might consider investing more heavily in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with you. It's actually my favorite network right now. And I think part of that, and this kind of goes to what you're talking about, why Instagram is something they might consider, is it's a beautiful, fun medium where people are spending more and more time. Usage has definitely increased year over year. And the interesting part about it is that people both love posting, but it's also a window into the pretty worlds of their favorite brands. So, people use it and they like to seek what they're interested in. So in addition to that, it's used by a wide demographic of ages, genders, and races. So it can be really a good platform for advertisers that are looking for economies of scale, specific niches. And actually, a Pew Research stated that not only are the demographics really broad, but that 56% of Instagram users have a household income of over 50K. So, that means that people who are using Instagram may have a little bit more disposable income. And then my last kind of best part is the integration with Facebook advertising is incredibly powerful and actually really easy to use, especially for people who are already familiar with Facebook advertising. So the way that you can target based on demographics, location, interests, kind of anything under the sun, that just makes it a really great platform for people to figure out what works for them, test a lot of different stuff, and in kind of an easy and fun sort of way.
I remember, when Instagram first unveiled advertising, of course, as an agency, we're bum rushing them and saying, awesome, we want to do some of this for our clients. And then, initially, of course, the minimums were ridiculous. So you need like $100,000 or something mm-hmm. like that. Are we clear on like what the minimum is or what's going on with that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And there is no minimum, which is amazing. I'll be honest, Facebook's really not heavily advertising that because I think they want you to think that you need to invest heavily in it, but it is treated exactly the same as any other Facebook ad. So whatever minimums you want to put in is something that's available to you. So it can be a great resource for small businesses looking to just test the waters, all the way up to really massive companies who are are looking to get into that platform. And the cool thing, and this is really my favorite part about Facebook and Instagram advertising as a whole, is that it's still, bar none, the most cost-effective advertising strategy I think I've ever seen, especially when you compare it to like traditional print or broadcast CPMs.
Very cool. Yeah, that's good to know for sure. Well, from a business best practices perspective, I know one of the challenges with using Instagram advertising is that in most cases, and correct me if I'm wrong, when it comes to really promoting anything, you're really trying to drive traffic elsewhere. So what do we need to know about that?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And I know that this has been one of the biggest pain points that, me personally, my clients, and then, kind of the industry as a whole has had with Instagram, is that it can be very limited in terms of driving people off the app. And, I think that was one of the benefits that Facebook brought to the table, is they understand that advertisers need to direct people elsewhere and not just keep them on the platform. So the exciting news is that they actually have links in the copy in beta right now. So Instagram is testing a type of advertising called carousel. People who are really familiar with its Facebook counterpart will know kind of what I'm talking about. It's an ad form where you can have users scroll through a bunch of different really beautiful photos, and then the final slide will actually allow them to click off the app into like a landing page where you can walk them through calls to action or a product or whatever it is. So it's currently in beta, and I would expect that it'll probably be released wide in the next 3 to 6 months. I think it's in beta right now. They're testing it out, kind of figuring out. It's only available to people who have sort of an enterprise level budget. And I think I've only seen one actually in the wild, and it was for Burberry. But it's pretty cool, and that's really, really nice to see. But totally understanding that a lot of people aren't going to have that Burberry budget right now and want to test something more immediately than 3 to 6 months. So on an organic basis, putting the link in the bio and specifically calling that out in your post is the most effective way to get people, to direct people somewhere else. I know that's really limited, but that's just sort of what we're working with right now. If you want to follow somebody who does a really great job of this and sets a good expectation, E! Online, the television network, actually does a really great job. And they just say, link in bio, and I use it all the time, and it's a great resource to get me where I need to go. A couple other just really organic ways you can do it is really provide strong incentives in your photo, in your copy, so that people actually go hunt for what you want them to themselves. So what I mean by this is like quick, easy details about, say you're having an amazing sale on your products, like 50% off. Give them that incentive to say like, hey, I can find their website on their own. I really want to see what's on sale. Or an amazing prize for a contest, and you say, go to our website for details, but look at this amazing prize. And then the kind of final component of that is making sure there's a really clear call to action on where they can go to take that next step. And then a lot of people who are tenacious will take it upon themselves to either Google it or poke around your website to get where they need to go. The last thing is you can put a URL in the photo. That's kind of a last resort, to be honest. Most applications of that I've seen look a little cheesy. So just make sure that you're incorporating it, if you have to, into the photo in a really nicely designed way, and it doesn't look like you just slapped a URL in there.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I'm by the way, I appreciate that you're talking about things that you can do from an organic perspective on Instagram. Obviously, these platforms are becoming pay to play as we get into them. But I know everybody all the time is trying to figure out what can we do that isn't going to cost us any extra. So I appreciate that. And then I just want to say too, thanks to everybody who's joining this blab. And I know Libby's laying down some good wisdom here for Instagram. Just so you all know, this is being recorded. You'll be able to replay and watch this later. So just quick update on that. And then Libby, since you've touched on organic, but let's go ahead and look at the advertising side of Instagram. what would you say if you had to just offer our audience some quick tips on getting started with advertising on Instagram? What would you tell them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first one is a little bit intangible, but don't be intimidated. I've talked to a number of my clients that are just feeling kind of the pinch of, oh, well, it was, $100,000 minimum or $10,000 minimum, and that's not the case. So I think jumping over that hurdle and just saying, like, we're going to try it. Let's not be intimidated. Now is a great time to test it out because the market for ads is not currently saturated as it will, it's going to be in, 6 months to a year. So you can really get in and have a good opportunity to catch people before everyone's in there. Another part of it is know that the success of your ad is going to hang on the quality of your image. It's all about the photo on Instagram, as I know you all know, but just so make sure you take your time with that part and don't necessarily use something that you would absolutely use on Facebook or somewhere else. Make sure that it really fits more that Instagram look and feel. So meaning it's highly saturated. It has a lot of texture or a visual interest. Like how would it catch someone's eye? It is going to have a different spec than traditional Facebook ads. So don't want you to get down to the wire and be like, oh my gosh, we didn't design it for this size. So go in there and look at the specs on what you're going to need. And then the other thing is to test 1 to 3 images in each ad set. So you can really figure out what do people respond to and get some more information there. Also, play around with the Facebook and Instagram targeting settings way well in advance of your launch. First of all, it's just kind of fun, honestly, to see who and what you can reach. But identify and test 2 to 3 different demographics or groups so that you can see where the ad is working best and how people are responding to it.
Good advice.
Staying in your budget comfort zone is another thing. Again, that kind of goes back to the first point about not being intimidated. I always like to start either really high or really low, but especially for people who are just getting started with Instagram, I'd say stay in your comfort zone because you can always ladder up. You can always add more budget. You can always increase, your bids or whatever. So if you just want to test the water, start low and then ladder up to see kind of where you need to go. And then the last thing is don't be afraid to pause underperforming ads after 3 to 4 days. And I know that sounds really fast, but when you use a lot of the optimized CPM models that Facebook and Instagram have, they're going to quickly help you identify what are the top performers. And if you pause underperforming ads, then that's just going to free up more ad spend to go to the ones that are actually working.
Very cool. Makes sense. For those of you that are just joining us, I also would just want to highlight once again, because I can, Libby had a dentist appointment today and her mouth is slightly crooked. And she's like, am I really going to do this blab today? And so, I'm giving you more props.
Two-Face today, a little bit.
Like Two-Face? Nice.
Two-Face.
That's awesome. Look at all these props coming your way. Come on, people, give Libby some props. There it is. Okay, cool. Well, all right. So we've talked a little bit about organic best practices on Instagram. You touched on advertising. There's something I want to bring up here just because, I don't know, I feel like sometimes the basics are easily missed and sometimes things can be done better that you might think are basic. And so with that in mind, I would love for you to talk a little bit about what should we know using Instagram for marketing, just in terms of best practices for taking the right kind of photos.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of a fun one to talk about, to be honest. And it goes back to something I chatted about earlier is, color, texture, pattern are really going to need to be at the top of your mind. And also thinking about it objectively and using this question as a litmus test. What would catch your eye? When you're scrolling through your feed, what catches your eye and causes you to either stop or comment or double tap or what it is? And really thinking about it objectively can help you say, this may not be the best photo, or we can do better, or this is it. Another thing I've been seeing a lot, and we try with many of our clients when we're shooting photography, is playing around with angles. This is huge. So the 3/4 rule. So when you off center something, off to one side or in a corner often makes things about a million times more interesting than if you just shot them centered or head on. It kind of adds an allure or a mystery or plays around with the space. It just makes it a little bit more interesting rather than, oh, here's the same, photo of this product right centered on, and kind of catches people. Don't be afraid to get close. People, again, like to see things really close up. What does it actually look like? What is the texture? What is the feel of it? And then a big one that I'm seeing is, I hesitate to use the word trend, but I think it's one of the best things that I've seen applications recently is shooting things overhead. So whether it's food or a landscape or whatever it is, if you can get kind of overhead and take a great shot of it, people seem to be really responding to that. One it's been kind of fun too is don't underestimate the human element. I've seen this both in my personal Instagram and with clients, is having, somebody reaching into the photo, grabbing something, or they have their torso, or just straight up having the entire person within the photo. People better understand your intention, and I think that they can see themselves in that situation. There's something more to relate to. So, I think that can just be a really great thing to test. And those photos tend to outperform others consistently. And, people are awesome. So put them in your photos. The last thing is staying consistent with your look. So your filters, your colors, sort of the way you compose your photos. Too much inconsistency will make you look like you don't know what you're doing. And that doesn't necessarily build trust with your followers. They like to understand who you are, what you're about, and consistency can really give them that message.
Cool. Those are great tips. That's awesome, Libby. You touched on, I know you didn't want to use that word trend, but you did touch on it. So in terms of the future, what you have your eye on just in general, when it comes to how businesses are using social media, what can you tell us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big one that I've been talking to a lot of my clients about is investing in good branded content, particularly photos and images, is always worth it.
So you're talking beyond iStock photo, for example.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's always great to have a good stable of that at your disposal, but things that are specifically tailored to you immediately communicate better what your brand is about, make a better connection, and they just become resources for people in your social media teams, your marketing teams, and beyond. So, you're going to get a myriad of uses out of these investments, and thinking of them as investments is a really good idea. So I've seen clients use content anywhere from, social and digital where it started, but then branding documents or investor presentations. Good content is a resource for everyone at the company. So, and I think it's often kind of nice because then you can get people to start paying attention to your department and say, look at the cool things that they're doing. And people better understand sort of the value of it all.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I know people love to get to the practical and tactical. And just in terms of tracking some of this activity, think about what you can do on Instagram. Maybe you can just talk a little bit about that. Everybody's always after ROI, and understandably so. And so, any insights you have on that, I think would be helpful to hear about as well.
Yeah, totally. I think one of the big misses that I often see is people not taking advantage of tracking pixels. I know they can be a little bit controversial because, cookies, people don't typically love that kind of thing, but from a marketing perspective, tracking pixels, whether it's, through Google or whether it's Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, they're immensely beneficial for us who are trying to drive traffic and improve value of, the efforts that we're putting together. They're really easy to implement, and they can often help justify the cost of investing or further investment. So, making sure that you work that into the strategy, take the time to think through, okay, we got to do this. We got to coordinate with the developers to make sure that the tracking pixels getting integrated into a landing page or whatever it is. Just making sure it's part of the process rather than an afterthought is really going to pay out in the long term.
Yep. That makes sense. Awesome. Well, Libby, we're at our 20-minute mark, which is what we target for these blabs. We know everybody's time is valuable. Thank you so much for joining today, even with your crooked mouth after the dentist. I mean, that's friggin' dedication.
Oh, Lord. It's recorded and everything.
It's recorded and everything. It's history. It's awesome. Today, as part of our final segue, we like to do a book recommendation of the week. Here it is, Do More Faster. This is by David Cohen and Brad Feld, some Boulder locals to us. Awesome book, quick read, highly recommended. Our nonprofit shout out of the week goes to marchofdimes.org. Definitely check that out. My co-founding business partner, James Clark, had a preemie. His daughter Josie was born, weighed a little more than a pound. March of Dimes was essential to her living the awesome life that she's living. So we love the March of Dimes. The quote of the week, this is from our star man. We're pulling one from David Bowie here. I don't know where I'm going, but I promise it won't be boring. Love that. Thank you so much for joining us today, everybody. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter at room_214. You can also subscribe to our email newsletter by going to room214.com/blog. Our weekly series continues every Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Mountain Time. On behalf of everyone at Room 214, thank you for joining us for another episode of The Agency Way.
Thanks, everyone.